Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Currency Roundtable. This is number 7, lucky number 7, because with us tonight is Ben the COIN Geek. He has been, kind enough to donate his time and punish himself by joining the Currency Roundtable. And basically, we're just going to, again, like we always do, have a conversation. Not going to try to pin Ben to the wall with this or that. But we all know that certain topics come up. And Ben, you do have a place in the industry that may or may not require your expertise. But again, that's not our point. We want you to join in, just like everybody's got an opinion, everybody's got a thought on what we talk about. So with that said, Ben, how are you?
Good evening. Good afternoon. Good. I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Good.
Really well.
Well, I'm happy to be here. This is like coin purgatory.
You meaning you're waiting to get into heaven to go to currency world?
Yeah, correct. It's where coin collectors who haven't quite figured out yet that they're supposed to become currency collectors wait. See, you knew how to interpret that properly. Thank you.
Totally. Ben, I do have to ask you, you took on a pretty big thing back in January, hosting your own coin show. A regional show would probably be the best description.
Yeah.
You said it went well. It certainly looked like it went well. My question is, yes, you do want to do it again, and have you recovered?
Yeah, it's going to be annual. It's an annual show. It's a regional show. I don't know how to compare it to other things yet. I mean, it was just our first run at it, but I think it'll be a really nice event. I mean, because our main concept is really about bringing generations together and creating new collectors. So, which is, every show you go to, there'll be dealers and there will be collectors, but we're going to just try to make sure that we get dealers in the room who are worth having in the room as best as we can. You can't weed everybody out. And also, there's just that angle of, for those of you who haven't seen our YouTube channel, the COIN Geek, even though we're showing coins off and currency off and other odd collectibles, we're always talking about history or something that's going to educate along the way. And so what was fun for me at the coin show, the Tucson Coin Show this year, is I got a lot of feedback from people who brought kids with them, and that the dealers were all so friendly. And that is something that, for those of you who haven't been to Tucson, that's the feedback that I get lots of times. Like, oh, people here are just friendly. I'm like, yeah, that's a nice idea, right?
That's awesome. I mean, that's
great to hear.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say that's great to hear that so many that people are bringing kids in, because what I hear all the time is, why is it always all the old people doing this? And I say, what are you talking about? We have young children in here like Dustin, always showing us all the neat stuff like that. But no, seriously, to have the younger kids.
Dustin could be me and Steve's child. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and I thought I was the kid up until Dustin showed up. It's such a good point, Ben, that you're bringing in that younger people are bringing in their kids to these shows, because everybody always says, oh, it's just an old people's hobby. It's an old people's hobby. Until we get people like Dustin, of course, our own little young un that we can have in the discussion group. But yeah, to introduce young children to this hobby is such a great thing, because all you have to do is put your hand in your pocket and you're now instantly a coin collector if you have something to look for.
Yeah, it's good. I find that that kids are very much so interested into different types of antiques, collectibles, and hobbies, but they do have to get exposed to it. And the problem is, you have a lot of people that they go to their meetings and they do this and that, but they don't actually actively go out into the community and try to show people things. There's not a lot of proactive activity. So for the generations that are saying, no one is going to get into coins, I just can't, no, I don't believe it. Well, get out there and show them to people and do something about it. Don't just sit there and whine.
All right, let's get going with our conversation and our topic. Ontario, I'm turning this over to you, my friend.
Well, I think just to start off, this is something we've certainly talked about, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it, Ben, is, the number of coin collectors versus the number of currency collectors. At least I'll speak for myself. To me, it just seems like that number is very large. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm not really data driven. I just go by my gut. But based on the number of people that come into the store on a daily basis and look for coins, or the number of conversations we have with people emailing the site or, calling us, it's definitely the coin market compared to the currency market. It feels like it's got to be a good 10-to-1 ratio, if not more. And
Yeah.
maybe you guys think that I'm being generous, maybe. But there's definitely many fewer. Let's put it this way. When it comes to full-time collecting, you get a really big disparity. In other words, you'll run into a lot of people who are coin collectors who, okay, so they want to get a bison, or they want to get a
Mhm.
chief, or they want to get a battleship,
Right.
anything with a nickname, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, they're not really probably going to actually collect like a spectrum of currency. They're just going to buy one or two. And so that kind of muddies the water for that. But people who actually collect a lot of currency and little to no coins, that percentage starts to get much and much lower. And if you go to like one of the big national trade shows where they've got 500 tables, how many are full-time currency dealers? You got 10 tables in there, maybe.
Yep.
Really, honestly, think about it
Right.
that
Right.
way.
When you go to those shows, you certainly can tell. I could be wrong, but I mean, based on inventory, I mean, it's just the guys that are coming out with the rubber bands full of, they've got a case full of obsoletes, and they're labeled by region, right? They're
Yeah.
into it. They got to be full time, but you don't know. You have no idea. There's certainly more currency dealers at shows by far than there were 10 years ago. There's a lot more currency.
Yeah. Do you think
I
that's a factor of just demand, that the market's just hotter now, maybe? Or
Yeah, I think it's a merging of the two more than anything. I know I am pretty much exclusively currency, but that doesn't mean I don't have coins. I've got a book of Morgans. I haven't bought a Morgan silver dollar in 8 years. I have a $5 gold piece to go with my 5 cent Racketeers nickel.
yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, those are both, that's definitely coin collecting. But I mean, I haven't bought a coin in years. Not that I'm looking to sell those, but I
Yeah.
feel that that's kind of, I'm like the opposite of what the average person is. The average person has all these coins, and like Ben was saying, the one particular note. But that's where I'm starting to see more and more dealers bringing in currency to their stuff and not necessarily being exclusive to currency.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right.
I think honestly, like you can go back to Pawn Stars. You can go back to, even COVID, people picked up a bunch of hobbies during that. People have had avenues to educate themselves a little bit, and currency is just something that they've been able to educate themselves on. I've been doing this like 20 years now, and there's actually people to talk to about it, hence you guys. Whereas in 15 to 20 years ago, it was hard to find someone. And I really feel like, pop culture a little bit has helped with that, along with the ability to research and just be self-motivated, you know?
I think one of the big things that's helped in any of the markets is the social media aspect, which is, you couldn't find people 15 years ago because how would you find them, right? Like
Yeah.
if you think about it, I mean, Facebook was kind of maybe one of the first real domains where people started finding each other. But now today, it's, you have groups of people and collectors all over the place. So you went from a world where if you're in a small town and it's like you and two other people, that kind of maybe collect coins or currency, and now you can go online and, well, you can be a part of, a coin club, a virtual coin club, just about anywhere. Or, for us, like on the YouTube channel, we attract people who are collectors at heart because that's what we do. And so anyone can join the gang. You just hang out, and you don't have to be there on a Tuesday night at 7 p.m., second and fourth, except for when the moon rises, right? It's like the entire industry. I think we have a larger, more interactive collector base than we did in large thanks to the technology.
Yes, and access to inventory. You can live anywhere and be on eBay or auctions or buy from dealers directly online. There's a lot more access now.
Because I am not a dealer. I am a collector. I enjoy collecting, and one of the other things I enjoy is going on eBay and finding these deals. It is going into the stores and finding different deals like that. But
Right.
once you've got so many of a particular item, are you going to give up the hunt? The hunt is the fun part. So that's
Right.
why I end up, doing my auctions and stuff. So yeah, like you're saying, there are so many other ways now that people can purchase notes and to see notes.
I think I'm always amazed at how just generally rare currency is compared to coins. I mean, it's very easy to find notes that there are less than 100 of them known, and actually how affordable they are. I suppose that's because of the demand, just a smaller collector base.
Well, I mean, like Mark, like the compared to the conversation that we had
Yeah.
with coins and I don't know, the 1916 D,
Yeah. It's the next thing on my list. Yeah.
as far as what that costs in that condition, the
Yeah.
rarity of it,
Yeah.
where going with that, it's like, why isn't, and I know it does happen, but I'm not talking about the $1,000 watermelon here.
Right.
We're not talking about unreachable, unattainable
No.
1913 V nickels. I mean,
Right.
it's these are out there, and like Steve,
Right.
you have
Well, all right. Let's roll it back just for 1 second. You were talking about a 1916 Mercury dime.
yeah.
Okay. What is the survival rate on that?
10,000 is the estimate given by PCGS. 1916 D dimes, the same for 1893 S Morgans, about 10,000. Now, if you compare that to a battleship note, the $2 Federal Reserve banknote, which we all know, according to Track and Price, there's only about 6,000 of those remaining. So that means a battleship note is rarer than a 16D Mercury dime, but you wouldn't know it by the price necessarily.
And I mean, does that all come back down to there's less currency collectors? Or, which I think it's part of that, but I also look at it as like, do people realize that I can go get a decent, it might be a 15 battleship, but I can get it for a $500 to $700 range, at least at this point, depending on if you're patient and things like that. It can be found and it can be purchased for that.
Right.
And it's like, I'll take a step back talking about the coin club I belong to. I went to one meeting and the guy's like, well, wow, you're into currency. That's super expensive. And I'm like, well, what are you collecting? What are you working on now? Well, I'm trying to complete my Indian head, series. And he's like, I got one coin left and it's like 1878 something, whatever. And so it's like, that's like $1,500 for a slick that barely has a date. Am I wrong, Ben? Is that the wrong date? I don't know.
It's the 1877.
There you go.
I was waiting for someone else to bail you out. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what your buddies are here for. They got your
I'm in the
back.
right.
That's the only one that I was missing.
Right.
I was going to pop that one off, but I didn't want to brag.
You're
I'm
Dan,
lucky I'm in the right century. All right, when it comes to that.
but to your broader point, this is the funny thing about perception, and perception has a lot to do with how we collect, right? So he perceives that currency is really expensive, so he doesn't get into it, and yet he's going to spend probably $700 to $1,500 to complete that one coin, coin to complete the set. And, so people have money to spend on things. They don't always understand. They don't think about getting into another marketplace because they consider it intimidating. And so, I see this all the time with people not wanting to get into going from US to world or to ancient coins. But a lot of US collectors, it's the same thing for them going into currency, where they just think, if you actually show them a book and you thumb through the book and you look at all the different types of currency that the US produced, they can get intimidated pretty quick. And then, of course, you look at something that's 10 grand or 20 grand, and you're like, oh my gosh, but there's plenty of stuff out there that's very collectible currency.
Oh, yeah.
It's an interesting point with ancients. Going, if you had 100 coin collectors, are you going to have one ancient? Nobody really wants to work. You want to learn more about what you're collecting, and it's fun and find out a nugget here and there. But that's actually ancients is probably a good comparison to currency.
And that's what's important about what your guys' channels, the roundtable and respective channels do, is because, you're showing stuff off, but you're also educating. And that's really, people are drawn to that naturally. Anytime you can look at something and learn from it, there's a couple of good ancient guys on YouTube also. And, you learn, you can really learn pretty quickly if you have someone who's actually knows what they're talking about.
Yes.
I always focus on any note with a story. That's how I built my collection. If it has
Yeah.
a cool story, I want to get the note and I want to be able to show the note. And I, like I said, I've been doing this for myself long before anybody ever bothered to watch this stuff. So I always wanted to do that just to make sure that I would remember those stories. And the fact that people actually started subscribing and enjoying hearing about the stories is how I ended up getting in the position I'm in now. But still, like I said, I'm just a collector and I'm trying to share those stories because there's a lot of really cool paper money stories out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another thing I wanted to get you guys' feedback on this. It seems like to me that a majority of currency collectors seem to want one note per series. And I mean, there are exceptions, but that tends to be what they're looking for. Whereas a coin collector tends to want many examples from one series, like Morgan dollars. I mean, they want a lot of different dates and a lot of different mints.
Well, that's interesting. So, okay, let me track back for our viewers,
Yeah.
because I think I got lost and then I got found. So, you're not saying that they only want the $5 educational and not the 2 and the 1. What you're saying
Right.
is, like in a 1917, where there's like 18 FR numbers, they only want one of them.
Right. Except Dustin. Right.
Except us.
Right.
Is that like the delineation here?
Yes.
That
Yes.
is
right.
That's what I was getting at. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a typeset.
Do you think that's true though? I mean, do you think that's true or not?
So I think that it's that there's definitely truth in the fact that I don't know many currency collectors that try to establish all of the Friedberg combinations on any one given series. There's that's like someone who's really specializing.
Yes.
But if you're talking about trying to get one of each type, yeah, that's different. Like, yeah, they want those series. But
Right.
to make a comparison of signature combinations to like mint marks and dates, I
Right.
don't know that it's quite analogous, because especially with the date thing about currency is, the dates stay the same. And so those signature combinations, for whatever reason, they don't mean as much to people because
Yeah.
nobody knows who these guys are, right?
Right.
But you know where
Yeah.
the Denver Mint is.
Yeah.
You can find
Yeah.
Actually,
Colorado on the map.
I think the better comparison would be not necessarily the signatures, even though that's how most of us think of it. But
Right.
when would be the blocks. People that are trying to compare or complete all the different blocks. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
on that, Ben, because that just blows me.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, so like block collecting is basically at the beginning and end of the serial numbers, AA, AB, AC, AD, so that you can keep running the same numbers over and over again. And so you've got extra that changes now that you've got this in, the block differences. That feels more like guys that collect coins by die variety.
Mm.
Like
Right.
that's
Yeah.
minutia that the majority of coin collectors don't get into at all. But there's guys that do. They want every die aspect of a certain type of coin. And
All the
that's
vamps.
not, sure. BAM collectors on Morgans, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But
Yep.
beyond that, I mean, there's some really fine detailed stuff people get into with Cohen numbers and bowling, like all the cents and the early dollars and half dollars. All those guys are by variety. And that's a detail that most coin collectors don't really get into.
I mean, like Dustin, can I ask, you went after the 1917, all the FRNs in that 1917 $1 legal tender. What
Yeah.
compelled you to do that?
They were affordable, and well, for the most part, they were affordable. And I knew it was something that wasn't going to take my whole life to do. Man, I'm a task completer. I love seeing something done from beginning to end, even if it takes 3 or 4 years to do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that was just, it's a goal of mine, or it was a goal of mine, you know? I've sold everything. I've sold all those things. You know, Dan, you have one of them.
Yeah, I know.
And
Thank you.
and I don't know. That's just what it is. No
Okay.
problem. But yeah, it was just a goal that I knew I could complete.
Yeah. And that's part of collecting, I think, whether you're currency or coin. But I think back to Mark's question, it really is, I think currency collectors lean towards, I'm more of a type guy.
That's how I consider myself.
Yeah.
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 Well, and the nice thing though about
I'm a fancy guy.
Right, we're fancy type guy, right? I mean, it's still kind of the same.
my question for you is whether or not mules, as in the currency, should really be considered like a thing. That this is going to be kind of here. I'm tiptoeing into dangerous territory. I'm going to get sniped by you guys. But if a coin has a mule, it's literally like two different things that shouldn't have gone together. And for currency, it seems a little bit subjective that, well, that backplate was used on that other year also, and it was used on this year too. It's like, well, that's just how they did it. What's the big deal? And I'm gonna get okay. You guys can
I'm
send your
gonna
hate mail
support
to.
you. I'm going to jump in on this. I'm going to support that, Ben, because I look at it as one, you could say it's an error right there. It's an error. They're not supposed to go. I know, Steve, but it's like, why if it's not supposed to be an error, why even call it out? Now, I get the whole process of how the bills are made. And I'm just like, who cares? Who cares? It's 1, 2, 3 backplate instead of 5, 8, 9 backplate. Did the plate
Correct.
change? Is in God we trust? In Allah we trust now? I mean, I'm just saying it doesn't, nothing changed except a digit.
Yeah. But
And
that's
so,
the serial
no.
number collectors and block plate collectors too.
Yeah, I got
Okay, it's not an error. And if it was an error, it would be something that they pull. Okay, remember, errors aren't supposed to get up.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not an error. Okay, what it is them reusing or using leftover plates.
Yeah, they printed them.
Congratulations for a government program to actually try to save money. I mean, good for them. But then once those plates run out, then they bring in the plates that are supposed to be there. So there is a distinct difference between the two. And in most cases, you can't tell the difference. But in some cases, it has to do with minor things that were changed. I mean, look at a 2017 note compared to a 2017A. What's the difference? They changed the whole series for that, and nobody can tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
So just because we can't identify what the change was doesn't mean that there wasn't a change.
But I get that, Steve. But when you come back and it's like there are more mules than what's supposed to be, it just seems odd to me. But regardless,
Discord
the next series came into play.
I know it. All right.
In preparation for doing this, I got to digging around on track and price, and I uncovered some things that were surprising to me. I mean, for example, these are just some things currency collectors might find interesting. The $5 porthole note, 1923 silver certificate, is actually slightly rarer than the $5 educational note. There are fewer of them left, and they're 5 times rarer than a chief note. But yet, again, you wouldn't really know that by the prices. Obviously, the educational notes sell for a lot more. And well, again, we get back to design popularity, I would imagine, for that. But I just found things like that interest me.
What are the numbers on that, Mark?
The portholes are about between 25 and 2,600. The educationals are right at 3,000. The $5 education is right at 3,000, and the chief note is 13,700.
And that's all FR numbers,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. So things like that interest me. I don't know if it interests you guys or not, but I think it's interesting to think about rarity sometimes. That doesn't correlate to price necessarily.
I got my chief note because of the design and because of the
Right.
affordability of it.
Right.
So this was one of the first ones that I got that you had just rattled off.
Right.
After that, I got the 2 educationals, and I was able to get the $5 educational because I got it for a decent price.
Yeah.
But I sat for the longest time not getting the porthole because there was no draw to me for the porthole note. To me, it wasn't as pretty as the other 2 notes. It was expensive, and for me to put out that much cash for that kind of note that didn't really tell a story to me, I struggled to get that note. But then the instant somebody told me that there was controversy about the porthole looking like somebody looking down the gun barrel at Lincoln, there's the story, and then I got this. So it's just interesting that you you managed to knock off all 3 that I happen to have here.
Well, I'll set one more up for you, Steve, because I think you've got at least one of these, and maybe both. The 1886 $5 Morganback. Okay.
I've got it. I've got them. Go ahead.
And you compare that to the 1891 $5 silver certificate with just, I guess you call that a plain back, or I forget what that's
Right.
called.
Well,
doesn't have the
when
Morgan.
it's called the Morganback, you clearly want the Morgan.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the whole.
And you probably wouldn't be surprised to know the 1891 is rarer than the 1886, but the 1886 is the one everybody wants, and I get that.
Really?
I'm actually surprised that the 1886 is that much more scarce than the $5 portal. I know you're talking about generations of different time, but
yes,
I mean, less than half as many. And that kind of surprises me because, and I don't have price points memorized, but in my mind, portals trade at this really high price point. In Morganbacks, I know that they're not cheap, but it seems to me like that note would be like at half the total known of the other one, should be a lot more expensive.
Well, I think there might be a reason for that Morganback dipping in, is because I think coin collectors come in, cross over, and buy. They're going to buy one large size note, and if they can afford a Morganback, that's what I'd get. I mean, it's just cool to have that.
Yep.
Without being political, what's the right way to put this? People who are more conservative, more Bible thumping, take a lot more pride in the "in God we trust" portion. And the Morganback is the first dollar to have that phrase on it. Not intentionally, but it's on the Morgans.
Mhm.
So that's, I can understand that adding an additional draw to the particular note.
Are you saying?
I'm.
Are you saying coin collectors believe in God more than currency collectors? Should we go there?
I would have said the opposite for voting. But I'm the one in purgatory.
Right. But it's a valid point. It is. I mean, it's like little things like add that or current coin crossovers that are, I think, inflating the price of that 1886.
Morganbacks definitely have a crossover appeal. And so earlier, I think we were talking about just the appeal in general from coins to currency. And the fun thing, of course, about currency is that there's so many nicknames. And so it's easy to get someone associated with a note. So like someone who doesn't know much, but they're like, what's a bison? What's a chief? A battleship? There's a battleship? Someone sunk my battleship.
Miss H6. You sank my battleship. A game you can play anywhere. Battleship from Milton Bradley.
What's a Morgan? It's got $1 on it. And so when you've got something that appeals to the individual, they're happy to cross over and pluck up one or two pieces for their personal collection.
So, okay, go in that direction a little bit, Ben. I mean, okay, you're dealing with coin folks most of the time. No disrespect to that. It's your business. I get it. And that's where, a million collectors versus 100,000, whatever it is. But I'm curious, does your average coin collector, what notes do they ask for? Do they say, hey, Ben, I mean, are they asking you at the coin shop or however?
So, I've seen you guys talk about notes at different price points, like sub 300, 3 to 7, and 7 plus. I think those are the numbers you guys use.
Yep.
And I think the knowledge level for the average coin collector is probably in the 300 minus. In other words, like no one's going to come at you with a watermelon, right? They're like,
No.
they probably know little to nothing about national banknotes. They're going to come at you with 1923 silver certificates, 1917 issues. They've seen that, they want the wood chopper. They want the Chief, the Bison. Battleship's actually even farther back on the back burner. But Chief and Bison, I would say, are really more popular. I actually usually have to teach people about the educational notes. They usually don't know. The Morganbacks, not as much. I mean, it's really, to me, it's like the Chief and the Bison are the only like rare banknotes that most coin collectors know. And after that, it is your 1917 and your 1923 series stuff that they have seen when they've gone to a coin shop that's just a normal looking coin shop, and they've got, well, the Black Eagle, the 1899.
The Black Eagle, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And those are like, there's like 5 notes they know. And after that, oh, maybe I've seen this or that. But after that, it's mostly education. They haven't seen a Martha Washington. You've never seen a Tombstone. The only jackass you've seen is on YouTube. And so after that, they just, there's a whole lot they have to learn still.
Those
Yeah.
stories about those notes are so important. I mean, you just mentioned the jackass note. The first time I heard of that note, within 48 hours, there was one in my collection. That's how quickly I picked it up once I heard that story, because I figured once I heard it, everybody was going to hear it, just because that's the way I think. And I went out and I got that note. 48 hours, it was in my collection.
One thing I'd like to ask Ben is, what is the most interesting piece of currency you've had come into your shop?
I will say one time we did buy an actual Red Seal Arizona National Banknote, which so you
Oh,
currency
wow.
guys may have an idea
Ooh.
of the scarcity of that.
Yeah.
But that's 20 years ago. That's been a long time. And occasionally people bring stuff in that'll be like a nice banknote collection,
Mhm.
but you might see one of those every couple of years. I mean, you just don't see, and it'll be 5 to 15 notes. For me to get a
Right.
collection of something that's going to be like what you guys would consider really nice collector notes that are scarce or unusual, really few and far between, especially in larger quantities.
Is your Winslow, Arizona note still for sale?
Well, I was gonna say I've heard of this place.
Oh, Minnesota,
I
the
don't know if
city.
anyone's heard of that place. Most of the better banknotes that I've bought have been notes that I've bought from collectors, dealers, or auctions.
Mhm.
Having something really cool come in over the counter is pretty unusual. To the points that Steve's making
Yeah.
about stories, and that's what sells almost all collectibles. Stories.
Right.
Well,
Right.
one of the examples you mentioned colonials, and I started thinking about. I've got a 1759 Delaware 20 shilling note, and I bought that off of eBay. It was graded. It was graded rough shape. It's like an 8 or something like that. But it was printed by Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
I mean, enough said.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say that on the sleeve. So you have to know that that note was printed by Benjamin Franklin. And because it's so rough, it's really difficult to read it. But because I knew what I was looking for, I bought that Ben Franklin note for like $100. I mean,
Right.
like that's not worth more than $100. It's easily worth more than
Right.
$100. Yeah, it's easily $600, even in rough condition, because it has that story. But if nobody's going to tell that story, yeah, like you're saying, if there's no demand, then I get it. That's why what we do here, telling these stories, is so important, to let people know what's out there.
Well, and that kind of goes back to, hey, Dustin. So, when you're comparing this rarity scarcity And, Steve, you've run the numbers on, the fancies. And I'm not a fancy
Well,
guy,
fake fancy.
right. But I mean, the rarity, and Dustin, you've talked about, that this is a rare. I mean, what is specifically going to make a fancy rare?
Right. I think it's the most aspects you can get on a note that make it unique. Like if you have a radar note, reads the same forward as it does backward, well, that's 1 in 10,000. What about a star radar? There's another level of rarity. What about if you make it a 2-digit radar, a binary radar, and then you make it a binary star radar? See, you're adding those levels of rarity, and I think that adds to the uniqueness. And it doesn't always translate to value. It's just like what Ben was talking about, what we've all talked about here. It's all supply and demand.
Yeah.
I was sitting here thinking, Ben, do you ever see any fancy serial numbers come across?
You don't, it's just stuff you don't see, but it's really funny you mentioned that because I was going to ask you guys if you happen to like notice anytime that you're when you're driving around, what your odometer's at, because like mine was just at 114411, and I thought
Yeah.
only someone who likes to look at currency, because I will look at serial numbers in my change. I do. I always just glance, and if there's something that looks like it might be interesting, I'll take a second look. But randomly, no, it's the same thing. So randomly, good currency, good serial numbers. Once in a blue moon, just by having a storefront, you'll see a 4-digit number or something on a modern note. But to see something that's like really fancy, somebody was searching for that. I recently had a customer bring in. You're familiar with the same serial numbers, different
Oh,
printing.
yeah.
Like I had a customer
17 Bs.
who ended up getting a pair of those. So that's like I guess it wasn't supposed to have the identical serial numbers on the notes, one from Fort Worth and one from the other facility.
23B, 13 star notes from
2013 B.
13 B. I think I said 17.
But once again, that's a collector bringing that in and someone who specializes. And so, the great thing about having a coin shop is you meet people who specialize and then you get educated because they're very into whatever they're looking at. And so you get a chance to learn from them. But now fancy serial numbers, I've had a few, but nothing that's just like walked in, like the I got it moment. Just didn't, not yet. Now I got something to look forward to.
Did those Russian gold certificates walk into your shop and stay there for a long time?
Yeah. Dan is like, I'm gonna be like giving those away as
I tried helping you.
I want to let you know when I think I'm gonna have to have special instructions at my funeral to like have those out, and they can like be burned like hell banknotes.
No way, man. I'm telling you, folks.
Maybe I'll be buried with them.
Well, you're down to at least 149 or something. I mean, well, no, that's what you're selling them for.
Yeah.
They're great notes. I mean, it's like, this is where it's like, it's just like, and I love anybody who hasn't watched that video, go track it down for Ben, because just the fact that he admitted that it's like, okay, here, and then when you pulled out the chunk, and of course I'm going to show the clip again, but then you're like, wow, made a mistake here, didn't account for the oversized holder calculation,
right.
And yep, you're human, you're not Ben the robot.
Well, no, the point, really, it was funny because I was making a reference to myself when I talked about the jackass note, and here he thought I was talking about a banknote. I was like, no, that was me.
We don't have to turn you upside down to know you're in a jackass, though.
So we're on, as long as we're talking about currency and currency scarcity and rarity. No, I gotta hear myself for a second. I need to calm down. Never had a feedback thing when I've done Zoom before.
Do I sound any different right now?
Same here.
I'm not hearing echo now.
You sound worse. I didn't know you could sound any worse, but you do.
Ah,
That's what friends are for.
Yeah. Oh, if you've heard the conversations Dan and I have had.
I've seen, yeah, it's funny because the stuff that doesn't get edited out, I'm like, well, I'm glad they don't bring like flaming arrows to each other here.
No.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is, so the advantage is you have the mix master Dan there who can edit things for you.
Ben, do you market currency differently than you do coins? Do you have to think about that differently, or?
I don't market them differently. And what we do on the YouTube channel, of course, is mostly just we'll show stuff. And if things are still in inventory when the video drops, we'll have links down in the video. So
Right.
that's just kind of a natural thing that's happened. But the fun thing for me is either way, like you're showing stuff off, you're sharing your hobby and your passion for your hobby. And so the marketing, if you want to call it marketing, doesn't really change. But it's mostly because like you get what you get. And I know Dan's met me in person and like, and you know, it's just, I'm just me. And so there's not really marketing except for when I try to do April Fool's videos. But other than that,
Okay, now it's time we find out the real truth about the COIN Geek. No more messing around. Now you want to know about Mexican paper money, huh, Gully man?
Ben, if there's one book about currency that you would recommend for folks coming into your shop looking for information, what would it be?
so I still would lead off just with Friedberg. I mean, assuming that they want US banknotes, that's the starting point. The follow-up to that is when I get people who come in and they're just looking for something they want to buy locally, and you know, I don't have a Friedberg in stock or whatever, but they go around. I always tell them, you look at the thrift shops and you look at like if there's the old used bookstores, any currency book that you get, I don't care how out of date it is. I don't care if they had to mimeogram the pictures in there. Like the older the better. The information is still good.
Yeah.
And so I like some of the older Gene Hessler books. Older books are fine because the content, you know, in there is good. It'll tell you still whether something is rare or not. You know, and that's so I always just start with Friedberg, and also because the numbering system that anyone uses is on Friedberg. And that's the nice thing about currency, by the way. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. Now, NGC has their own numbering system. PCGS has their own numbering system. CAC has their own numbering system that they're actually pairing with Graysheet on. And so they're all doing their own numbering systems. But PMG and PCGS paper both use Friedberg,
Right.
which is great.
Mark, you got anything?
Well, the only other question I'd like to ask Ben real quick is since he mentioned that Red Seal National, there was a book, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico currency book. Are you? No?
So the funny thing is, I am not familiar with that book. And
Okay.
so I own the domain name Arizona AZ Nationals, but
Okay.
I've never done anything with it. And I would like to one day kind of create a nice web page where people can come and get educated about Arizona Nationals and have like an interactive map. Because if you're not from Arizona, it doesn't mean quite as much. But still, like if I look at another state and I have like an interactive map, so because I don't know where anything is in another state. But it's cool because, man, nationals are so fun because you learn the history and growth and migration of people and why, right? So if you pull out an Arizona national banknote and the four of you guys don't know the name of the city, there's like a 75% chance it was a mining town, right? I mean, and in Arizona is easy because it's a smaller, you know, there's only like 27 banks. You know, which some places have that many banks in one city.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a different thing. But I'm not familiar with the book. Have you had access to it, Ontario?
No, I just came across it recently. The only place I can find it is on eBay. It's a little bit pricey. It's around $80. I just wanted to get some feedback from somebody who knew about it before I spent the money.
Well, you're already using price and track. If I
Yeah,
said that
track
right.
price. Yeah.
Track and price, and that has all the information anyone needs to know
True.
about. Hopefully a good book. What a good book will do is it'll have historical documents, photographs, images.
Right.
That's what a book should do.
Right.
And I wouldn't sneeze too much at the price point as long as you're going to keep it and enjoy it. But I
Yep.
would kind of want to make sure that it's not just price and track data points. Because like the old school guys, they've got, so I did get this out. My Arizona National. So there's so nationals are funny because you usually have like one or two guys that really dominate any given state,
Right.
and they gathered the data. So this is like spreadsheet material,
I see.
like it's still 1988.
Right.
Because Peter Huntoon tracks this stuff his way, and when he goes to coin shows, still he's got to be 90. He'll update this, and he'll
Like
update who owns the banknote.
I see.
And that's so, but you don't want the book to look like that. That's
No.
not a good book.
No.
That's just data. If I can go back to the currency scarcity question for you guys, maybe I'll throw something at you guys, and you guys can all sound off on your thoughts on graded currency and rarity and what I call in the coin world mid-century modern. And if you think there's a place in the market for this in the long run. So like, for example, these two banknotes here, we're looking at 1981 A series, PMG 67, pop 3, none finer.
Yeah.
And that's a note that's like $400 and you get $100 rebate, and the 66 is a pop of 12 with 3 finer, and that's like $250.
Yeah.
Like I consider this to be that weird balance between scarcity, rarity, but it gets into the grade thing, which is like a whole bugaboo for people. I don't know if you guys, if grading is as big of a deal to you guys. Like in the coin world, they'd be all saucy over that stuff. But what do you guys think?
Well, go ahead, Steve.
I'm always under the impression that grading a note does not increase the value. Okay. A note is what it is. Okay. If you have a note graded, you simply have somebody's professional opinion. So you've taken that portion of the negotiation off the table. You no longer can negotiate what the grade is. Now you're just negotiating price. Whereas if you have a raw note, now people are going to negotiate what they think a 20 is versus what somebody else thinks a 20 is. So I will stand firm saying that getting a note graded does not increase the value. It makes it so that there's less debate on the condition. Now, I will also bookend that by saying you're talking about notes that you are holding that are 66 and 67. You can give me a microscope and 4 different light sources and a magnifying glass, and I could not tell you the difference between a 67 and a 68 or a 66 and a 67. So in that perspective, yes, it is important to get those graded because those are fine lines that people just can't seem to sharpen in on. So when you're talking about top pop, a 66 versus a 67 top pop, one of 3, yeah, I can understand the want and the rarity of that particular note. But when people are talking about, oh, I got this note, it's probably a 20 or a 25. If it's a 20, it's worth $200. I got it for 180. I'm going to get it graded just to see if it's getting. No, that to me is silly when people do that. But when you're talking top pop, like you're showing there, yeah, that's something you definitely want to get graded because I think that is one of the comparisons with coins and currency when you get to those high grades. A 66, if there's a bunch of 66s and there's only one 67, I can most certainly understand why that would drive the price.
From a collector point of view, not that this is big for me, but I think those modern notes, and love the mid-century modern because it's basically, you're talking 63 and after, I think. And I'm seeing people going after those high notes because of what Steve is talking about. I mean, once you get past 65, it's cough button. There's a thing. You're thinking about your newlywed, whatever. But seriously, it's called mute. I don't know. Steve knows what it is. Seriously, people are going after those notes in those high grades, and I think there is a growing niche market.
My inability to express myself in a question form is going to get me kicked off of Jeopardy. But the point I was trying to get at was back to the conversation, which is the original topic of scarcity versus price point.
Right.
My point with those notes was, here are notes that, have really low populations.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you look at the populations of all the different district notes graded, it's a pretty small amount of notes, especially in the higher grade notes. And I understand it's a little bit different animal when you're talking about grade rarity, but still, on my mind, as someone like for a long term, I've actually told people I like those banknotes in particular for my inventory who've come in and asked at the counter, like, what's a good note? And it doesn't have the same appeal for someone who's like, I'm just getting into the Old West stuff. This looks like a modern note. But I just, in my mind, I don't think you're going to see large amounts of 1981 $100 bills popping up and getting graded. Now, I could be wrong about that, but my experience with hoards and stuff, I just don't know that there's that much out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think those are beautiful notes. I think just to add to what you said, you just need some time with those notes. 40, 50 years from now, it would be a different story.
Yeah, I was at my bank yesterday, and she pulled out $5,000 worth of small heads, and
Wow.
I went through them, and I couldn't find one that was worth keeping because they were just all trashed.
Mhm.
So you can find the small heads, but to find them in that high a grade,
Yes.
that's the hard.
Yes.
But there's also survival rate and availability. And so I think what I'm hearing from you might be a generational bias. In other words, like you spent the 1981 notes, you don't care, but the 1934 notes, like that's cool. So, but when I talk to a younger person, when they see a small head, they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
And so like Dustin's probably like, what is that? Right. So
Right, exactly.
I was very thrilled to go through $5,000 worth of small head $1 bill or $100 bills,
as
but
you should
they
be.
were all trash. I was looking for one like you had.
Yeah. The broader conversation of like what is a good, future collectible on rarity versus value and anyway,
I
it's
mean, I
just
think it's a valid point though, Ben, when
Yes.
you roll
Yes.
back in going, yeah, an 81 is with that grade and it's 100. I personally, I mean, if you come across 50s like that, I'd say it's even a better mark for the next decade because 50s
Yeah.
are just so rare. But they certainly are interesting in the small headed, and it's time. And I think the next move that will happen, especially with the old small heads, the 63 to 95s, is that will move when our currency changes, I don't know, 15 years from now. I mean, I think
changes to
you will
zero.
see a move on.
Yeah.
I mean, the currency is going to change somehow, probably around 2030. I mean, that's when the new 20 is supposed to come out. I don't know why it takes 8,000 years, but we can put out a commemorative coin, 18 times till tomorrow. Anyways, I don't have an opinion on that though. Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I'll go back to what I think people are interested in. And it's funny you said because I spent it. I think that's attractive to some of the folks that I've talked to. It's the currency of their childhood. They are actually attracted to it even more from that aspect. So I think you're either on to something or you're on something.
We're back to popularity again
Popularity.
for whatever reason. For whatever reason. Yeah.
Well, when we're talking moderns, I think the one that everybody missed the boat on is the monochrome set.
Yes.
I mean, when you think about that, isn't that kind of the modern day comparison to the educational notes?
I mean, it was a short series.
Yeah, I mean, just because they managed to get through all five or all the denominations, where the education only did the 1, 2, and the 5, those were not out very long. Try to find a $5 that's crisp. You know, a $5 monochrome that's crisp. Not going to happen. You can find the hundreds. You can find a 50 every once in a while, but you can't find a 10 or a 5. They're just all trashed.
So Ben, you threw an obsolete out, just to poke fun at me and make me angry. Jealous, I guess, probably the better thing. But I am totally now just going down the obsolete rabbit hole. And
Oh,
Sorry.
it's opened up. Well, it's just
did it, Steve?
oh, we lost Dustin. That's even better. But it's just like a whole new place to collect. Because I don't know, is anybody else feeling this? Like, probably not on camera. Yeah, it's just how many more Federals can you collect? How many more that you can afford? Then those two things go together, especially for my budget.
So I think what happens with almost anybody is there's just like the collector's journey, and your journey changes over time, and eventually you just find yourself either not challenged, or sometimes fiscally at a dead end, or you find something else that is easier for you to romanticize. And like, so collecting, the stories and the romanticization and all that stuff, the broken banknotes, like, so to me, I find colonial currency, even though it's more opaque looking and it's not as attractive compared to, the stuff that type collectors like, I find it much more interesting from like a historical and even a visual standpoint. I actually really like the old paper, the hand autograph, the brown ink, that I find to be really interesting. And your broken banknotes also, the level of different designs and the amount of specificity of your township or your city that you can get down to. You go down like that's where the bank was, and so and so owned it, and my great uncle used to work there, and it's
It's
totally
comparative to
different.
nationals. They
Yes.
have a parallel story of nationals.
Yeah. They do parallel nationals, and so once again, to my question about whether mules should be considered anything or not, it's all about whatever people want to collect, and
Right.
why are things popular and other things not as popular? Well, we don't really actually know how to answer that question all the time. There's plenty of things that I think should be popular and they're not, but if they're not popular, enjoy collecting them now, because that's probably the lesson from all of this. Enjoy collecting now the things while they're not popular, because I
Yes.
appreciate the currency guys, educating, and what you guys do is fantastic. Also, you get a bunch of new coin people to come currency guys. Some of those things you've been chasing down might be harder to get.
Be
That's
careful
right.
for what you wish for. Although, Ben, I don't think silver spoons are going to become any more popular in the near future. So you might want to just cut back on that collection.
I was almost complete too.
All right, we are at the end of our discussion. If you'll notice, Dustin is no longer with us because we just voted him off the island. But no, reality is he had to get to work, and he just had to cut out, and he said he would do so quietly, and he did. So, Dustin, sorry to see you go, but thanks for the time that you gave us. And speaking of time that you gave us, Mr. Ben, the Coin Geek, thank you so much for coming on to the Currency Roundtable. Gentlemen, any other comments that you'd have for Ben?
No, just thank Ben for being here, and thank everybody for watching.
We're waiting for
Oh, Douglas, Arizona.
So I had to do a little show and tell for people who go to coin shows, and I'm there. Sometimes I'll have these with me.
So you'll bring them with?
Yeah, sometimes. Douglas, I have a few things that I hold on to, not many. The Douglas is basically, I probably only have 2 banknotes that are like really not for sale. My Tucson and my Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
But the Winslow, do you still have the Winslow, Arizona National?
So the Winslows, you might see double.
That is just, man.
That's why. Oh, that's great.
You got 2 of them now.
Let me get these. Let me see so you can see both the serial numbers here, because they're
No way. Steve, we hate him even more now.
Nice.
Got to buy them together. Got to keep them together.
I am keeping them together.
Exactly. Yep.
So it's a thing. And you want to talk about design and romanticizing things. who like when currency guys or coin guys that aren't currency guys yet, when
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
I
know how
love
you
that
could
design.
I don't know how you could look at these banknotes and not just be in love.
I love that design. Yeah.
And this
You
is my
know,
deal. Now we're going down the rabbit hole. I mean, it's so cool, and I don't know why coin folks can't appreciate it, because I certainly appreciate the medallic art. That skill that goes into making that something that small, that thin, in quote unquote 3 dimension is an unbelievably artistic skill.
but what's great is like, I mean, what I've really enjoyed about YouTube and just meeting more and more people in is the ability for them to see stuff like this. Because the reality is, if you're just a coin collector, how are you going to get exposed to it? Like you never, like if you go to your coin shop, they don't have anything nice. They have some silver certificates in the corner. You don't look at them, but the reality is I got a lot of people who watch the material, even if it's paper money, they're like, well, I'll watch. And then I get them in the rabbit hole, and then that's fun because it's the same thing as getting kids interested in the hobby. You show it to them, and then it's like, oh, that's
Well,
different.
that's one thing. I mean, I do appreciate, Ben, for a coin guy, the coin geek. I mean, you do actually show quite a bit of currency. I mean, back when I had you on the first time, when I ran your stats, literally went back, to video number one, which was, oh my L, that was terrible. But we all have bad first experiences.
You're
No,
being too
seriously,
kind.
literally, I think it was like 20% currency, which just dropped my jaw. And I guess that's why I've subscribed to you. That's why I kept on watching you. Besides your charm and young, good-looking guy, it's all good. And you do show currency, and at a much higher rate than other quote unquote coin channels. I'm curious, do you see a dip in, I've never dip in your views when you show currency?
I'm sure that they get fewer views than,
Yeah,
but it's not a fair comparison because like the content that we put out, there's certain things that have the most views are oftentimes not the videos that I care as much about, if that makes sense.
right.
Like lots of times I'll talk about something that I think is important or educational or interesting or different or weird, and those won't get as many views as, anytime you do like a grading or an open box, because that genre still sells. And I don't do it because it sells, but it's just a part of what we do, you know, but the same thing happens. It gives you the chance, guys who are only going to a YouTube channel to watch open box videos. If they watch enough of them and get engaged, what can happen is they can start to look at a different video. And so we'll try to call back other concepts and ideas when we do open box videos. That's why it's not just oh, I got a 67. Oh, I got a 63. Oh, I got this. Oh, look at that. Oh, can you believe this? We'll talk about what's in front of us. And it invariably, there's going to be some percentage of those people watching open box videos that are going to click on a link and watch a different video about a specific topic and just start the journey for them instead of, just watching, dopamine hits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was a long goodbye.
We didn't say goodbye yet.
We
By the
didn't
way,
say goodbye yet.
I'm not done with you.
Wow.
No.
Okay.
Purgatory's a long time. So,
Don't you have any chance to get out? I thought your Catholics had good a chance to get out. I don't know. Somebody's paying money to somebody to get them out. I know that's not Catholic. He was fighting. He was against the Catholic system. Martin.
Don't tell anybody about that picture right there. I like old things. I got to get back to Ontario really quick. Just really quick.
What did I do?
No, nothing. You talk about going back to videos. Ontario was, I think, commented on like some of my very first videos. He's been around. He's the OG.
I've been around a long time. Yeah.
Well,
in YouTube years, let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, but honestly, I mean, he was on the cutting edge for YouTube stuff because he was there before a lot of people, and he was enjoying the content and creating and like being a part of the community. And I think, of him, and Silver Surfer was right there on one of the first.
Yes.
One of the first videos that I did, and it was coin content too, So
Thailand Platinum, I think, was another one he was on there. Yeah.
He hangs out and make numismatics great again. A lot of these guys. But I just was curious if Dan ever picks on you because you have a coin on your cup.
I
Yeah.
help him with his coins.
He helped. He actually redesigned my icon. I don't know whether you've noticed it, but my channel icon.
I
He gives me such a hard time.
look what's lined up right there.
Oh, he's got
What's
coins.
right there?
He put them out for the video.
These are things you guys never see. You know, I do videos on coins.
And now you know
People
the
yell
rest.
at me. Speaking of, okay, so I talked to other folks that do videos, have their YouTube channels, and coin people are mean.
Okay, so listen.
Seriously, I mean, I'm like, the dude's just trying to show his coin and tell you something about it.
No.
Go after it.
Coin people aren't mean. Social media people are mean. So in other words, you look at now, I can name 2 guys right now that are in the coin video making industry, if you will, who have 150 to 300,000 subscribers, and we've got like 22,000. Okay. Look at the comments in our videos. Also look at how many people watch our videos. So you'll see 300,000 subscribers and they get 3,000 views, and with 22,000 subscribers, we'll get 3,000 views. And look at the comments. It's not the same people. And that's why I refuse to make YouTube videos. Our video content's going to have black and white headers. We're not going to have some wild, bold face on it.
Clickbait, yeah.
No, that's not what this platform is for us. That's not what we're doing. And that's why it works, because we're not out there to try to hype things and make money. We're just having fun and educating, enjoying the hobby.
It's funny you say that, because if it wasn't for Mr. Stu sitting there, I wouldn't be here. And I'm I say that a lot, but I do mean it, Steve. I really do. And I just wanted to do something different to tell that story.
My channel is as basic as they get. I'm not into clickbait or anything like that. I just show what I find and share the stories.
But I'm getting back to I don't want to say they're mean. I'm just like, wow. I mean, it's just, I'm reading comments and they're very knowledgeable in their comments. And I'm just like, did you not listen? I mean, he just quoted somebody else like Bowers, and it's like, that's not good enough for you? Or I'm just like, well, there's no way that's a 65. And I'm like, well, that's what the holder says. So
second rat hole down this conversation. No, to me, this is an important industry conversation to have, is because, one, I do believe there's a difference between guys that only watch certain types of content and they're not really in the industry. That to me is what you'd call pardonable, right? That's like, they're just ignorance. There is a huge problem where you still have these holdouts that are the comic book guy from The Simpsons.
The most bitter people are the smart people who aren't successful, because they feel that their shining light wasn't given due course and that the world should fall at their feet. Unbelievable. That's comic book guy on The Simpsons. Like they nailed it.
Right. Who are basically, no, you may not touch it. No, you may not look at it. You know, you don't breathe on it. Like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And like, so guys who sit down and I think about message boards in general. Like, any message board you go out to has the same idiots on there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, honestly, imagine if somebody else was like going from sports message board to like coin message board. It's the same, like, dude. But anyway, the people who, as soon as your comment, what I'm getting after, what you really sparked for me was, you know, you have a guy who's just trying to share what little knowledge he has about the industry. And this guy's coming out to snuff out his candle, right? Like, that dude's never going to stay in the industry as a collector because some guy was an a-hole to him, instead of like taking him under his arm and saying, okay, yeah, now what about this? Or what about that? And, you know, like, anyway.
And again, I mean, because I do read each other's. Do you guys read comments on and all?
Yes.
I don't read everybody's comments, but I mean,
I will be honest that I don't read them like I used to.
No, I get that.
And
But
I've been trying to run a coin show.
Stu, it's like they have a love affair. It's like, you know, Stu's, you know, it's awesome. It's cool. It's very cool. It's a community.
I read every comment on my stuff.
Yep.
I used to reply to every single one, but there
So-
comes a time when that's just not really possible anymore. But I do read every one, and that's why I always click the like and the heart thing on there, just so
Yeah,
they
I
know
try to
that
click up the likes on comments and go through, but I might be 3 or 4 days before I get to.
I can't. I don't know how you could click. You're almost at the point where
You put out 6 videos a week.
Things are nobody's, right?
I know it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, how do you can't keep up, Ben? You can't.
No.
No, YouTube can't keep up. My real frustration with YouTube is that they still use an algorithm, and I'm like, guys, if you would just every time someone subscribed, automatically put my videos in front of my subscribers, my videos would have twice as many views, which is what YouTube says they want.
Well,
I mean, they say they want.
Well, how about the reminders? You click reminders. There's only like 5 or 6 that I have. All 3 of you, Dustin was still there's less than 10 that I get the bell. I do the bell also. They don't come into my feed.
No.
I mean, it's like, what? Okay, I don't get it.
It's it's because because people with college degrees are making decisions. I mean, what do you?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I am appreciative of the platform, though. I mean, I really am. I mean, it's
Yes.
wouldn't be having to hear, and I'm not ever going to really go down that hole of complaining about.
Thank
YouTube.
you. Yeah, but in
I'm not
that to
saying
the
you are
point,
either. It's just some things that make you scratch your head. Is kind of
yeah.
when you bring it up, I get it. I go, yeah, it does make you go, but you go, I'm going to keep making videos.
Yeah.
Because I'm a narcissist, but just saying, I am. It's all.
Well, I just want to say thanks to you guys for having me on, and also for what you're doing for the hobby in the industry. And so I hope lots of people who didn't maybe see your channel before got to come here and just experience some of the ability to sit down and listen to guys talk about currency. What a fun time it is. And I really appreciate you having me on, and I hope that Dustin makes it back out alive.
He's got the yellow shirt on, so he's safe. So we know that. Okay. All right, folks, as always, that's it for Currency Roundtable number 7. Ontario, Steve, Dustin, and Ben, thank you very, very much. You're all appreciated, and we'll see you next time.